Good afternoon, boot campers. Hello, hello. Hello. All fueled up on some pasta. Good conversations for your PMR with any luck. Ready for the next bit. So we have arranged, as part of the boot camp program, a number of speakers who are entrepreneurial or very innovative and who have been doing things differently and creating value for themselves and for others. And so for the first speaker that we have in for you today, and there's some more during the week, is Trent Young. Now Trent, perhaps some of the Australians in the room might have heard of Trent. He was a professional rugby player for the South Sydney Rabbitohs.
Go the Bunnies.
Why aren't you clapping more enthusiastically? Is everyone here a professional rugby player?
Good energy.
So that's one part of his life, and that's not necessarily the part of his life that he's going to be talking about this afternoon. While Trent and his brother were studying, and they were studying engineering at the University of Southern Queensland.
Southern Queensland, yep.
They started a business. I'm sure they actually started doing some work, and then they saw an opportunity and set up an organisation called Young Guns Container Crew, where they unpack shipping containers. All right, interesting problem. There are a lot of them. And so this business was established 15 years ago here in Queensland. They now have over 400 people working.
600.
600, there, that's more than 400. 600 people working for them around the country, where they have contracts with major organisations here in Australia as well. So they've established and grown out of their Brisbane base and are found in all parts of the country with a lot of people working for them. And I look forward to hearing Trent's story, and we'll have time for Q&A after that. So give him a warm welcome.
Thanks, Rowena. Everyone hear me all right? Yep? Okay, so Young Guns, bit of an unusual name, right? For a business, a bit corny. And I get asked a lot, what is Young Guns? Anyone seen this movie? Anyone? The older people in the room? Yeah? That's not us. All right? So, although I did grow up in the country, so I grew up 600 kilometres west of Brisbane on a cattle station, and I was quite fortunate because I grew up with some of Australia's and the world's best entrepreneurs. I call them farmers. So, yeah, farmers, in my book, are some of the world's best entrepreneurs. They're faced with so many challenges, and they're always looking for solutions. So they're always looking for solutions within the problem. And that mentality around solution in problem is something that will set you up to be successful in life, in my opinion, because you face a lot of problems. Whether it be drought or whatever it may be, they're constantly facing challenges in that environment. And, they have mouths to feed, not too different to a team, the team that you lead. You've got people that rely on you to survive. They've got, numerous stakeholders that they have to engage. They buy and sell cattle and livestock. They deal with equipment. They sell in equipment. They've got numerous stakeholders. They sell livestock that they have to engage and understand, because there is different markets when you're a farmer. And I was very fortunate because, the lessons learnt for me were that why failure is good for you, because they have a lot of failure. And you would have seen in Australia at the moment, there's some big droughts at the moment in Australia. And that resilience and understanding why failure is good for you is an important lesson on your entrepreneurial journey and your work life, and for your personal life as well, for that matter. Because we all will face some hardships. There'll be obstacles thrown your way that are hard to jump over or hard to handle. And we shouldn't be afraid of the hurt, afraid of the discomfort. Because if we're afraid, we'll just miss that little bit of an opportunity to learn and grow. So for me, this is a really important part of my upbringing, was growing up in rural Queensland and facing some, diversity, some hardships. Sorry, can't get the word out. And another big part of growing up in Western Queensland for myself was sport and community. So growing up in those isolated areas, we had a school on my station and a community centre, like a sports centre with a tennis court and whatnot. And every Friday night, all the farmers from the district would drive in, they'd play tennis, watch the footy, have beers, a real sense of community. And in the local towns nearby, there was all these sports. We had access to lots of sports, and that's what these country communities thrive on, is sport. And I was very fortunate from an early age to get exposed to sport. And I've always been driven by purpose and challenge. And that's really helped me in good stead, because I was able to play a lot of sports growing up, everything from soccer, rugby league, basketball, tennis, to badminton, table tennis, lawn bowls, you name it, we were playing it. That's a beautiful thing growing up in small country towns. You jump on your bike and you can get there. You don't have to rely on mum and dad to take you an hour across town. Although you did need help on the weekends to get to certain towns and travel a bit of a distance, but generally speaking, during the week, you could play any sport you wanted. There was no limits. So my journey with sport, which has also helped, I take a lot of learnings out of my sport into my entrepreneurial business life, for lack of better words. I was never had much talent, to be fair, and I didn't really need it. And I grew up with the likes of Darren Lockyer and a few of these high-profile rugby league players in the local area, but I wasn't anywhere near their level. I never made rep teams. I was a middle of the range sort of player, but I didn't need talent, is what I worked out really early on, because what I had was the effort, the attitude, and the passion for finding out how good I could be. And that's basically what drove me, was to continually bettering myself. The best version of myself was always in front of me. So a lot of people, as we look outward, we look at people like, Tom Brady and whoever it is. I know the Patriots are playing today. I probably would rather be watching that right now than be sitting here with me. But, we look outward for idols growing up. The reality is we should be looking inward. You should be looking at, what is the next version of myself? When I look back 10 years, 15 years of my journey, I knew absolutely nothing in reality what I know now. And I'm sure if you do some reflection, so many of us look outwards for our idols, and benchmark externally. True mastery is looking inward. It's what is the next version of myself? And you being right here this week is about you investing in the next version of yourself, the best version of yourself in the future. So that was my continuous journey with being a no-talented rugby league player. No one would have said I got to that level, but I just kept chipping away. I moved to Toowoomba and went to uni in Toowoomba, played some sport, moved to Brisbane, finished uni, went to Brisbane for work to do engineering. And my rugby league, I just kept at it and chipped away until I was lucky enough to play for Russell Crowe's sacred Rabbitohs. So it was some really key learnings, but for me in what I do now in my business, which I'll talk about shortly, are taken from my upbringing. It's funny how the past always links you to your future. There's always, in your DNA, the past will link you to your future in some way if you reflect deep enough. So what do? All right, as Rowena said, we pack shipping containers. So we pack shipping containers for export. So a number of people in Australia still manufacture in Australia. Even Unilever in Sydney, they've got a manufacturing plant where they'll manufacture some products in Australia, Arnott's biscuits, etc. So that's an Arnott's product right there. We'll pack containers to either go to New Zealand, or Asia, or to go around Australia. We actually load containers to distribute around Australia. So that's one half of what we do. We also unpack. So obviously 90% of what we do is unpack, because a lot more stock comes into Australia than it does go out. The biggest exporter Australia had is air. So we unpack a lot of shipping containers. I think we're going to hit 700,000 shipping containers by the end of this year sometime, since we started. And yeah, so the process basically works is it gets manufactured largely in Asia, A shipping container gets packed, gets put on a ship, comes to Australia, to the port, gets taken off the port, a truck picks it up, takes it to a distribution centre, a big shed. You'd see some big sheds around near the port, but also in numerous locations west of the port. You know, the land's a lot cheaper in those areas, so distribution centres these days aren't always at the port. And we play a really small part in the supply chain. It's really difficult to find reliable people to do this work. And it is very physically demanding. I'll talk a bit more about that later on. So we started in 2004, we're in our 15th year, 2019. How we started was, my brother and I both went to uni in Toowoomba doing engineering. As we went through uni, we unpacked containers. We needed to make a few bucks. Had a couple of different jobs, unpacking containers was one of them. And that's where the idea started, was, that there isn't reliable people. They're constantly looking for people to unpack shipping containers, because it is a really manual demanding work. Both trying to play a bit of rugby league on the side, and then we had someone at our footy club in Brisbane said it was importing furniture. He said, I can't find anyone, can you guys come and unpack, get a couple of guys from the footy club to come and unpack a shipping container? So what you did, why not? Went and did it, and it started to come together. It started to understand that this is bigger than just, this opportunity is worth having a look at. And basically what we were doing is doing some market research. I hear you're doing some market research now, asking people lots of questions. The beautiful thing these days is so much information online, so that puts you all at advantage. But what we were doing is going on a journey of discovery. We were starting to understand that there was a gap, there was a problem, and we had a solution for that problem, being reliable, fit for purpose people. So we didn't understand how big it was at that point in time, which in hindsight now would have been probably some of the market research I should have done. But like I said, 15 years ago, I didn't have much knowledge. I didn't have the opportunity that you have at hand. So we're on a journey of discovery, and we thought, we're finishing uni and whatnot, and why don't we give this a bit of a go? And I was going to play football as well, so let's give it a crack. What have we got to lose? So 2018, coming into 2019, yep.
Is that okay to stop and ask questions while we speak, or shall we keep it to the end?
I'm easy. Yeah? Any questions?
This is amazing. Can you tell us again how come that first unpacking? So it was an accident? Amazing.
Yeah. Well, it was an accident, really. Yes. So, which is where a lot of opportunities pop up, right? You can be just exploring, just things pop up. You face problems all the time. It's just about whether the problem can become an opportunity on a larger scale. So.
Yeah. So who asked you to try and unpack? One of your friends?
Yeah, one of a friend of ours worked for a guy that was importing furniture. So big, bulky, you think removalist type, it's quite difficult. And that's where we started with two guys. Yeah.
Sorry, why was the labour force unreliable in 2004? Like just because it's hard work?
Yeah, hard work. That's the core of it, really. And they're very unproductive. So our business model, which I'm happy to talk through as well, we've created a business model that allows us to be much more productive than the ordinary person who has a very low incentive, hourly rate. I just turn up. There's no incentive to have any higher productivity. I'll talk to that later on.
Can you explain about the difficulties, considering the complexity of the awards and employment laws in Australia?
Yep.
And also having a manual platform. Have you found it easy to hire people, find people for long term?
Yeah, I'll talk to that as well. That's part of our point of difference. We've created a pipeline, a talent pipeline, where we aren't just a labour company, we're a service provider. We give people opportunities to come through our business. A guy who runs New South Wales and Victoria for us, he started in containers 6 years ago. He's now the manager of 2 states. So we're really people focused. We give people opportunities to progress. A lot of blue collar people who may have or may not have finished school have unbelievable untapped leadership qualities, and it's around untapping that leadership. Yep.
Do you employ backpackers?
Yeah, we employ some backpackers. Yep. You want to start?
We developing apps actually to connecting students with backpackers to employers.
Yep. Yeah. There's a few windows of opportunities there, definitely. Yep. Yep. Simple, right?
Yeah. And then,
It's not really a big idea.
I mean, entrepreneurship at the level of miniature details is fascinating. So how does the mind go from, okay, we unpack the container, make some money on the side to, hey, wait a second, maybe I should be doing this and looking at it. Tell us about this point of transition in the mindset.
So, yeah, really good question. There was only a couple of companies that were sort of doing a little bit of this, but they weren't doing it real well. So we weren't the first to market, but they were an informal. They were doing this very informally. And what we realised was that we had a problem, we had access to abundant people that could solve that problem. What do we got to lose? It was just it really became down to, if we can do a good job, and we've always prided ourselves on doing a good job coming from a work ethic-based background, what have we got to lose by testing this? And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But, sometimes fear holds us back, right? Fear of failure. Sometimes your ego will hold you back. Fear of connection. I guess just the way I've been brought up, I had very little fear, which is why I've had a bit of success in my sporting career as well. It's just, there was very, very few reasons why not to explore it and go on a journey of discovery. And I'll talk about testing and trialling a little bit later on, because the more you test things on a smaller scale, you start to understand, a bit like you're trying to get market research at the moment, but at some point you've got to actually go and test the idea. And your ability to test that on a small scale, which is what we did, we were testing, enabled us to really grow the business. And we didn't understand what we had, to be honest, for the first 2 years, until Kmart came online. That's when we went, gee, shit, this might be something bigger than a bigger idea. We could really do something with this. So we were in test phase for 2 years. So we have over 600 team members, and we're across 4 states at the moment: Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. We're looking at Adelaide at the moment, New Zealand. But 2 years ago, we also went into Canada. So we're in Vancouver and Toronto in Canada now. And that's a real growth market for us. Our market in Australia has consolidated a bit. We've got more competitors than we've ever had before. It's moved our margin share down a bit, but the margin share in Canada is much greater. And they're about 10 years behind. We did some market research. Would have been good to have this group do some of that for me. Yeah, they're about 10 years behind in supply chain, funny enough, just their practices around safety, unproductive. It is a little bit more difficult to find team in Canada, and employment rates are lower. But yeah, when we get it right, we get it, it's a really good market for us, and we're starting to see the law of the harvest. We're starting to, I don't know if anyone's heard about the law of the harvest, about the hard work you put in early and you harvest later on. Just recently, Walmart have come online in Vancouver, and a couple of big players. So we're really they're really understanding the value, and the common theme is until they get to feel it and see it, they don't believe it. So it's really about, we try and get trials with them to show them that we have something to offer. And that's probably an important learning is, you don't always have something that when you're starting out, you don't have that trust, right? So, and even belief. So until people see and feel things, then you can truly do special things. So the how. So this will probably talk to a few of your points earlier. The model we have is what I call family, village, tribe. Anyone heard of that term before?
Can you say the term again?
Family, village, tribe. It's a structure of our people. What does it mean to you?
I worked at Flight Centre.
Yeah. Yep. So it's teams within teams. So everyone's part of a team. So we didn't realise this early on, but after I read the Flight Centre book, and I steal ideas from everything. As an entrepreneur, you steal ideas, you become a big thief. Why not learn from others' mistakes? Yeah, we realised that we had this model, but it just wasn't formalised. And there's a lot of research around this as well, from caveman days, and how there's certain numbers of people that where you go over a certain tipping point, you just become a number rather than connected to teams. So that's a real key part for us, is a sense of connection with our teams. We break our teams into smaller teams who are, part of a larger team, and we actually, our names in our business, you're part of a family, you're part of a tribe or part of a crew, we actually adopt those names. So that's a real key part of our structure, is family, village, tribe. Everyone's connected. Very different to traditional labour, where you're just a number. If you turn up, you turn up. No engagement, no accountability, no quality. Very different to that. When we started, a key point of difference for us in the market was, one, our name. It was a bit unusual, right? So we wanted something memorable, and now we look at that from a customer mindshare perspective. Container crew, that doesn't exist in Canada. There's only a couple of small people in Australia that have container crew. So, we didn't understand it at the time formally, but we wanted to pick a name that represented fitness and, young guns, your guns. Something that represented energy. So we also adopted an orange uniform. So with a lack of professional approach in the industry, we wanted an orange uniform that stood out. It was different because everyone was yellow. And we had a uniform much like a sporting team. We've got a V on the chest. And for us, we've had some interesting feedback from customers over the years, especially take on a new customer and we roll in with 10 or 15 people, all in uniform on day one. They get this sense of excitement, a sense of, wow, who are they? This is the A team. So, and that's the experience we want to give customers. So there was a couple of real key points of difference. Even when you can see a CEO of an organisation or a senior manager from a different, we deal with a lot of West Farmers brands. It could be from a different brand. They usually stop and go, oh, who are these guys? We just sort of stand out like a sore thumb, and our work ethic is there on show. So that were a couple of basics that gave us a point of difference, not to mention the fit for purpose, which I spoke about earlier, people who are fit for purpose. So all these things came together to give us a point of difference on a very basic scale. I've spoken about delivering a reliable service, but another key part of our business is we challenge the status quo. So we never sit still. We mainly pack containers. That's what we do. That's the core of what we do, but we do much more than that. And I'll talk a little bit about our customers and how we've partnered with customers to deliver more value. All right, our people. So the people are at the heart or the core of everything we do. We're a very values-driven business. A lot of organisations, you'll hear this repeated to you at most educational facilities. People create values, but they become top drawer fodder. Our values, we talk to them in all our meetings. We reinforce them all the time. We have a reward and recognition program based on our values. That being, we're not only a people business, but you can't copy culture. Right? We've lost, I think, one senior manager that we didn't have alignment with in our business. We had to move him on, and he went straight to a competitor. The trust for me was that he didn't get our culture, right? And you can't copy culture. So this is really the core of our business, is the culture. And everything we do is around our culture. Our purpose is something we call best version. And we believe that the best version in us enables the best version in others. And that's why our business is all around developing new talent for the supply chain industry. That's how we hold on. We've got people we had a guy last Saturday, 13 years in our business, and we've been going for 15 years. So we do tend to hold on to people for a longer period of time than your average labour force. So our mission is what we call doing labour differently, which unlocks a lot of things in our business. Like I said earlier, we're not a labour company, we're a service provider. This drives innovation. We've spent a lot of money on our systems of work that support effective rostering, that support monitoring throughput in distribution centres. We've developed tools, so we've patented equipment to make it easier and safer and more productive to unpack shipping containers. And we've got systems of work now that enable us to scale and set up people to be successful. So doing our mission to do labour differently is in everything we do. And we're exploring how we apply a model to other sectors. That's the next stage for us. So scaling. As a business from startup, excuse me. Excuse my handwriting. This is where you start. A lot of organisers, I can't think of too many organisers that don't start that there, except for in the technology space. But most startups start with people. You're a people business. There's yourself, potentially a couple of friends, a couple of employees, a couple of team members, but you start in people. And the challenge for that is if you want to scale, you've got to work at how you replicate. And a key part of replication is developing processes and then systems to support replication. This is not the sexy part of business, right? But if you want to scale, you need to continually refine the structures that support scaling up. And if you're not going to invest in that area of the business at some point, you'll have cracks will appear. The other shortcoming some people have is they don't plan for success. And the last thing you want to do is disappoint a customer. So, and over success can mean letting people down. And as a business, we've said no at times. We've had really some good opportunities come on the table in the 15 years. It takes some real strength to say, oh, you know what, we're not ready. We didn't have the leadership capability at that time, like I said, and we believe in delivering high quality service.
And this is such an important concept. One of the things we should look at here is the concept of persona and the anti-persona. The persona is your customer, and the anti-persona is the customer that you choose not to pay. Can you give an example of the anti-persona in your case? What customers who are not right with you when you started the business, perhaps not right now, that you're choosing not to serve?
Yeah, great call. Yeah, so when I say no, saying no to customers, it didn't necessarily mean we didn't want to do business with them in the future. We weren't ready for them, if that makes sense. So that built trust straight away. Yes, you may miss an opportunity. There's a cost of time. So, that problem that they had at that point in time could disappear in the next month or 3 months or 6 months. So we may actually miss the opportunity. But it also built trust because not too often people say no. It goes against every business approach. The more customers, the better. Open the doors, let them in. But the reality is you can do damage if you damage your reputation. But to your point, I guess after 5 or 6 years, we started to understand that to support our people and to be real successful, we had to segment our customer base. We've actually had to cut off some of our customers. So because of our business model being real people focused, what we found was we had 2 types of customers. Those that needed a full-time requirement, so for us to service them every day or nearly every day, and those that didn't. And those that didn't were much harder to service because it's a bit like a removalist truck type scenario where they'll come in and going. So the variability of that, and in business you're trying to reduce variability, or you can attack variability as an opportunity. So what we did was over a 2 to 3 year period, we started to cut off a lot of our smaller customers at high variability. And that was a real strategic move for us because our competitors will service anyone. So that they're dealing with that variability on a day-to-day basis, whereas we aren't. So we're focused on giving people consistent work, reliability, delivering for our big customers. So that's where we focus, and we let our competitors play the whole market to their own peril. And it's funny, you do research and you talk to competitors occasionally at different events, and it's funny how that pops up. Go, yeah, we're servicing a lot of small customers at the moment. Occasionally you get market research, and you'll see they're servicing all these customers. We wouldn't touch any of those customers. So it's really important to that point. I think at some point you have to say no to people. I don't know, every business is different, but I guarantee there's certain people you don't want to service at some point in time. You see Nike, they've walked away from golf as a sport, as an example. So they're making decisions around who they don't want to service. So I don't think there'll be too many businesses that don't have opportunities in front of them where at some point they go, actually, that's not the right opportunity for us, and that takes some real professional maturity to make those decisions. So as far as scaling, back to scaling, one of the challenges you'll face in your organisation or as an entrepreneur is investing prior to growth. As I said before, you can, if you don't plan for growth. So in my business, you had to go backwards to go forward from a financial performance perspective. We had to invest in expertise that we didn't have before we needed them to be able to take on that growth and not burn our bridges. So that's a real fine balance in any entrepreneurial journey, is adding resources to your business that can I afford it and when do I need it? Because you usually have to invest in it prior to needing. So that's a real challenge in balancing balance that never really ends. And as you grow your business, you can't afford to lose touch either. As a saying, you get what you inspect and not what you expect. So scale shouldn't take away your requirement to be close to your business. And for us, early on, we realised that matchsticks turn into bushfires. So, small problems with the customer, if you expect them to bring that information to you all the time, that ain't going to happen. So, and all these matchsticks can build up and create a bushfire with the customer. And I don't like surprises. I don't know if anyone in this room likes surprises. I don't like surprises. So, and customers don't like surprises. So, you've got to constantly inspect, whether it be surveys or face-to-face, getting feedback. Feedback's a gift, right? But it's on you. You need to control that. That's what you can control. Extreme ownership is controlling what the customer's perception of you is. Yep.
Has there been any occasions that you're, in a tight position in terms of the finances and you kind of have to think outside the box to continue the business? Or have you been riding this smooth ride?
No, definitely. There's always, cash flow. As you grow, the number one reason businesses go broke is they grow to go broke because of the cash flow timeline. So, you do work today. Some businesses are lucky, you get paid up front, but in a lot of service-based businesses, you do the work today, you might get paid for 60 days. But in that time frame, you may take on another customer, and then that's another 60 days. So it's a snowball effect. That's why they say cash is king. So the number one reason companies go broke is because of growth. And there's been times when we started growing early on where, we were 10 grand short for wages and we're chasing checks. You're driving out to customers saying, mate, I need the check. Because back in those days, when we first started, a lot of people paid with checks. So there were definitely some frantic times, early days, where you're trying to get payments from customers. But even last year, we went through some big growth last year in revenue. There were some really tight months and days with our cash flow where you hit this really risky period where your weekly wages are very close to the amount of cash you have in the bank. So that's why I'll talk a bit later. You need a good partnership with your bank because you need, at some point with scale, you'll need some access to funds if you scale and scale fast.
Can I also ask this question? Sorry. Are they willing to provide that support forward?
Generally speaking, if you've got a good history in your business and you build a really good partnership with the bank, good trading history, you won't have too many issues getting access to funds. There's multiple ways, like some businesses that want to scale, obviously they might get investors on board or, there's multiple ways where you can grow your business or increase financial capability. Yep.
Just keen to know how you scale culture, because it gets quite tricky to scale beyond one office, and if your culture makes such a big part of your value add, not just in terms of what you give to your clients and your employees.
Yep. Scaling
beyond one office becomes super challenging, and then scaling beyond a single company.
Yeah, no, really good point. The guy that heads up our Canada organisation was on the phone to him for a one-to-one last week, and he said, you wouldn't believe it. He said, we've been able to replicate the culture in 2 years. And it's really around the people, having the right people that carry that value alignment all through your business. And it's about the systems and structures you have in place to support that. So you're recognising the right behaviours. You're giving people opportunities with the right value alignment. And not everyone will have the same complete 100% value alignment that come into your business. But if they have some value alignment, there's an opportunity for them to be successful in your business. It really comes down to all the processes and systems that support culture within your organisation. Yep. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just when you're saying you bring in expertise to help scale, how do you know what expertise you need and when you need them?
You need to go on a journey of discovery. I'll talk about that a little bit later on around who are the people that are doing it already. What do they do in their business? You know, do I need a financial controller? Do I need a CFO? You know, what stage am I at? You know, I'm not a finance master, but it's about you start to build a network of people that you can rely on for their opinion, because their knowledge with your knowledge gives you the 1 + 1 effect. You know, 1 + 1 = 6. So it's really journey discovery. It's around understanding what a different business is doing, talking to mentors, talking to people who have mastered certain areas, and understanding I'm at here, where are we at? You know, what are we going to need? That type of thing. So it's really, there is no perfect answer on that one. Yep, come to you in a second. Yep.
When you start to move to the international market, one of the key things that happens in international markets is that you pull in hard work, but the results come after some time. So when you decide what's the tipping point for you, because there's a lot of personal attachment to going international or going beyond your current office.
Yep.
When do you say it's time to pull out? The results haven't come. When do you say that's the breaking point?
Yeah, good question. Unfortunately, I haven't faced that decision just yet, which is good. Yeah, I guess whenever you go into any market, you're going to set goals, right? So you've got some targets you need to set and goals, and it's really about tracking progress against those goals. If early, 6 months, 12 months into the journey, there's a really big gap in where you thought you'd be and where you need to be, then you'd have to reassess and understand, are we going down a journey that isn't giving us the fruits that we want to harvest. So I guess the more you put in at the front end, the more effort you put in the front end, you'd like to hope that it bears fruit at the back end. So luckily we haven't had to face that, unlike Bunnings that went to the UK. We work with Bunnings and they're all gung-ho going to the UK, and I'm sure some people in the room have heard about that story, and they cleaned out all the management with the organisation that they brought over there. And what they failed to understand was that management had a really good connection to the customer. So although they were trying to bring the Bunnings culture over there, they actually eroded the culture and made it worse. So that was a real hurdle for them. And I think it only took them 18 months or so to make the call, because obviously the gap was that big that it wasn't worth continuing. So it really comes back to how well are you tracking against your forecast. And the tipping point will be different for every business depending on how deep their pockets are. You have to reforecast all the time. So if the forecast actually won't get your money back for another 10 years, you start to analyse, is this the best investment of time and money versus another opportunity? So that's the constant equation you have to keep running, is which investment gives me the best return. Yep.
You have a very catchy name. Culture aside, would you consider looking at a franchise model in terms of scaling up?
Oh, look, we've had that discussion a few years ago. It's something we may consider down the track, but at this point in time in our current markets, we think we can, with the systems and process in place, we think we can really execute without having to franchise out. There's nothing preventing that, because we sort of have an informal franchise model where the rewards and for our individual managers enable them to be successful in what they control. So, and that talks to our family village crew type structure. Is the managers of those areas are accountable to that region or that area and their performance, and all the remuneration is linked to that. So in some ways we've sort of got an informal structure that sits alongside that. But we haven't considered it in too much detail at this point in time. Yep.
So if you go back to the beginning of your startup journey and there was just one thing that you could tell yourself, what would it be?
Oh, good question. Don't bullshit a bullshitter. So that's really around understanding what you do know and you don't know. To your point before, the sooner you start to explore, really go on a journey, discover, talk to people what they're doing in the business, because they've already made mistakes. They've already had wins. So, we might have been able to get to the scale we are now in 10 years rather than 15 years if I'd known a bit more sooner. So it's really around understanding what you don't know and what you do know, and continually either filling those voids with learning. I was lucky enough, I did an exec MBA 2 years ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and it just gave me a really broad view of business, and it helped plug a few gaps around marketing and finance, and which sometimes an entrepreneur, you're all go, 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 you're just execution, right? You don't slow down, I pay someone to do that. So, it really gave me the tools and framework to ask the right questions, but we've all got gaps, right? So it's really around what are my current gaps and how am I going to fill them? Do I need that urgently or longer term? Sorry, mate. Yep, in the yellow.
Yeah, so right now we're going through an exercise on primary market research.
Yep.
Yesterday we worked on an exercise of, that led us to a problem that we've been testing with our research. We're learning the importance of building a business from the customer back.
Yep.
When you were starting your business, did you take that strategy? Did you build from the customer back through research you did, or did you?
We were lucky. We didn't have to do too much research because we just tested it. That in reflection, that's what I said earlier. It'd be great to have this room to give me a bit broader market view. But we had the luxury of just testing, and I've got a saying, fire a gun before you launch a cannonball. So we were in test mode. That was our market research when we were 2 years old, just testing the market. Oh, that customer wants this too, and there is a demand here. There is a market for this. So for our market research it was customer facing. It was the customer telling us that this is a problem, and that the more they kept buying and the more customers that came online told us that actually we should get serious about this. So we had the luxury of using that. Our market testing was actually in the market doing the work. And you don't always have that luxury before you invest time and money. So does that make sense? Yeah. And it's interesting, in our market, it's very hard to find data on how many containers each customer imports into Australia, as an example. I've got a lot of data on ports and how many containers come in different segments, food and retail, and so you get a bit of a feel for the size of the market, but you don't actually know which customers import, manufacture, how do they import. Some customers, have forklift unloads versus manual hand unloads. So there's a lot of variables within it. This seems quite simple what we do, right? But there's a lot of variables, And some products need scanning. Some products need to go on a conveyor. There are a lot of variables, and there isn't a lot of specific customer data for this market. Emma?
I was just interested, what are the kind of key lessons you took forward from your rugby career as a startup?
Have a crack. Yeah. I think, like I said earlier, I think sometimes fear holds you back. And obviously you've got to make a balanced approach. There's always loss somewhere, whether you're putting time in, you're getting return on time. But it's really around having a crack was a key one for me, prepared to have a go. Without any fear. And I always ask people when I mentor or talk to people is how would you operate without fear? That's a question you should ask yourself, because if you'd operate differently, what's holding you back is a key question I ask people. The beautiful thing of rugby league was it's sport and connection, right? And it's around, the other key learning for me would have been around, through that experience, my biggest gain was connection. And by connection, I mean I didn't want to let anyone down. So I just wanted to be relied on, a teammate that could be relied on, and I played my role. So for me, that's a really cool part of our business, and it's almost a self-assessment that happens in our business. If someone's not pulling their weight, our business now, those people they stand out like a sore thumb. So that for me is a really critical learning is having people that want to contribute and want to put in the effort and want to be reliable. So I know I spoke about being reliable as being a point of difference at the front line, but that goes through our whole business, in every team I'm a part of. Yeah. Yep. Keep rolling. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the questions you're asking, I'll sort of touch in some way, shape or form. Yep.
So I noticed
from your webpage that you offer like a great variety of services. At the beginning, I believe you were offering different ones, or maybe fewer, so were they always the same? How did you decide to?
Well, our core services never changed, but at one point in time we did dabble in 3PL, so we had our own warehouse, and we serviced some overflow for customers. So overflow is when you've got a full shed, we need more space, they're not going to go and lease a shed and lock down a lease, they'll need overflow. Because we had access to customers that needed overflow, we went and leased distribution centres on short-term leases. I had 8,000 square metres or 10,000 square metres of pink bats when the pink bat thing was going on in Australia. And we had some customers like BP storing stuff with us, and we were doing okay, but it's funny, we were making money doing it. But once again, after a couple of years, we asked the question again, what is our core business? What are we really good at? And that wasn't our expertise. So we shut it down, and we were making money, but we realised that was going to be a distraction for the greater good. If we're still running that, I can't guarantee that we went to Canada or, so it was really around what are we good at, let's focus on what we're good at, and we decided to cut that off. We've also been asked to do labour hire, so hourly rate stuff. We've helped customers occasionally in that space, that's purely partnership based, but it's really low margin, low value work, so we tend to not do that. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Alrighty. The last thing I'll talk about with scaling is admit you want success. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, it seems good, it'd be good to run your own business, gives you some flexibility, but you need to, my perspective on things, and feel free to disagree, is you need to admit you want success. The amount of economic and mental capacity required to own your own business, you might have to put your home up as collateral, with the bank. It is quite demanding, and if you don't want to scale, that's fine, but I don't see the purpose in earning a wage if you're going to take that amount of stress and risk on. So for me, that's fine, you can go and work for someone. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just if you're going to be in your business, for me, why wouldn't you scale? I don't see the logic in not scaling and not trying to grow and take the challenge on. Why would you want that level of stress in your life if you're not prepared to grow the idea and take the problem head on? So that's scaling. So the who, the customer. So the question, everyone to scale, everyone needs a customer, and you need demand, obviously. Welcome. So I've spoken about the what, and you need to understand what you're going to be, to who, and how you're going to execute, right? And this is the who. So I spoke to earlier a little bit about we're in supply chain. We segmented to the market. We wanted the bigger distribution supply chain so it's consistent work. So that's our who at the moment. And as part of our journey, I guess the core to customer is the customer experience, is building brand trust and building a really good reputation. So I spoke about the container crew and mind share. So, what is the terms that you want to grab in the customer's mind that they'll resonate with? And for us, that's container crew. But in a service-based business, there's a real opportunity to partner in service-based businesses, which we are in. If you can build trust with your customer base, we win 90% of our work through referral. So if we do good work, we get referrals, we grow our business. But partnerships is something that can come off the back of having, delivering great service. And to do that, you need to understand your customer, who's the stakeholder. The customer won't always tell you what all their problems are, which is where the challenger sales model come in. Anyone heard of the challenger sales model? Look it up sometime. It's just it's an approach to your customers where you challenge them on what their real problems are. It's a really good model for business. And it's really about going on a journey of discovery, humble inquiry, and constantly inquiring around what their problems are. Because if you think they're going to communicate all their problems to you, you're kidding yourself. So a good example is last year we partnered with Kmart, one of our core customers in Australia, and we did a Kaizen lean project with them. We both invested in it. We've saved them up to more than $500,000 a year for the next 5 years as a result of that project. We've also grabbed extra margin for ourselves, so we had to create a win-win situation. We designed a piece of equipment to increase productivity by 40% and reduce safety risk by 70%. And as a result, last week we won an award with Kmart Supplier of the Year for safety. So the opportunities exist if you want to explore. Kmart poses a bit of risk to us because they're greater than 20% of our revenue in Australia. So we've got two options there: get them below 20%, so grow with our other customers, or keep them sticky, so partner with them and find different service offerings that extend within their supply chain. So at the container face, we pick orders direct from, we cut boxes now and put them into FB2 bins so they can go direct to store, whereas they used to get processed inside the warehouse. So we're looking, our continuous improvement journey is all around, right, what are the problems they face and what role can we play in our niche space? And that partnership can unlock value, but you have to go on a journey of discovery. Alrighty, so understanding stakeholders. I've spoken a bit about customers and the gift of feedback. I think that's really important. If you're serious about understanding customers, go on a journey of discovery, ask questions, get feedback. That's really important, understanding customers. The opportunity's there for you. You just need to ask the right questions. And I've spoken a lot a bit about team. I'll just ask you a question to think about rather than answer. How is your team going today? How is your team performing? How many people in the room, when you thought about team, thought about the people that reported to you? Just put your hand up. Gee, you usually get a lot more than that. Yeah. No, I'm more talking about your work life, in your work life. Yeah, how many, when I ask that question, do you think about the people that report to you? Yeah. So that's a common answer that I get. And the challenge is what the team you need to put the biggest focus in is your peers. So the team that you're part of rather than the team you lead. That's a common mistake in any business is which is my real team? Because there's a lot of silos in business, and usually the team that you're part of is across multiple silos. And execution in that team is much more important than the team you lead. You need to start there, and that's a common mistake that's made in business as you start to structure up and grow. So as you grow your business, one of the challenges is what I call the founder's mentality. So you've got a lot more people in your business, and taking people and having them think the way that you think from a founder's perspective can be a challenge. And for myself, like when I fly to Melbourne, I jump on the bus to the city, and then I grab an Uber to the office because it saves $20 a trip when I'm by myself. Might seem funny, right? But for me, every cent counts. So it's just your behaviours. You're constantly doing things. You need to be constantly doing things that enable, that people see. People, they mimic what they see. So founder's mentality is a really important thing as you scale your business, is ensuring that you maintain that in some way, shape or form. The last part I'll talk about team as a stakeholder, because they are a stakeholder, the team you're in and the team you lead, is personality profiling. So I'm sure some of you anyone done personality profiling? Yeah? Probably all of you? Yeah? You probably did in the course. I see that as really important because you need to understand the people you're working with. If you don't understand them, how can you influence them? How can you get better results? So having a real strong team that understand each other, you can be miles apart from personality, doesn't mean you can't get great results. But it's really about understanding. And we call them red, blue, greens in our business. So the blues are the engineers, the accountants, the detail people. They're slow decision makers, but they need to sleep on it. Then you've got the Labradors, the greens. They're people focused, they love connection. And then you've got the tigers, the hunters. They make quick decisions, they're task focused. So in our business, in a lot of our conversations, even some really robust discussions, we call it winning discussions, where people go head to head sometimes, resourcefully, of course, is really around we understand each other a lot better now, so we work together a lot better. Because some people like to put their red hat on or be the tiger sometimes and drive and make quick decisions, but that balance in the room can also be good. Competition. Spoke a little bit about competition, but interesting one for me is competition as a stakeholder. It may seem unusual to call them a stakeholder, but the opportunities to partner with competition is sometimes missed. And even when you're starting up, who could assist me in my startup? What do they look like? So when we went to Melbourne, we partnered with a competitor, small competitor, to reduce the risk with a big customer, Kmart. And we partnered with them for a period of time because they had access to some good people. So he said, Lyra, let's do this together for a period of time. And it created revenue for them that they wouldn't have otherwise had access to. So sounds a little bit backwards, but competition can actually be a partner. Even big companies all the time, like Samsung in 2017 was Apple's biggest supplier, yet they compete, right? So this happens everywhere. But the other part of competition is the competitive side, which is, for me, is I'm a real competitor, and that was part of my sporting DNA. Whether I'm playing hopscotch, we're playing for sheep stations. So I am an extreme competitor, and there's some weaknesses that come with that as well. But you need to understand your competitors. You need to have them in your meeting rhythm. Every quarter we have a market and competitor analysis where we dump information in a Teams channel every quarter, and we analyse the information we know about competitors. We talk to employees that came from competitors to our team, ask them about what will they pay, what was the environment like. We're constantly inspecting competitors for information. So you need to understand your competitors, because if you don't, they may grab some competitive advantage on you. A good example for us where we had a win in this space was about 5 years ago. The market was moving in a more safety focus. And to be honest, the environment before that, when I reflect now, I'd have trouble putting our team members in a similar environment past that time now. So supply chain and logistics now is very safe conscious. And it's much different to 10 years ago, much different. But we decided, 5 or 6 years ago, we're going to invest in safety. And that gave us competitive advantage because we knew that our competition weren't investing in safety. They communicated they did in some way, shape or form over the last couple of years, but they just haven't invested to the level we are, to the point where we understand our work area better than our customer, and enables us to provide a safer work environment, educate the customer. They rely on us now to deliver their safety targets. So, understanding your competitors can give you real competitive advantage. So I spoke a little bit about mentors and specialists. That's a really important part of any journey, is tapping into the minds of these people. As I spoke about before, 1 + 1 = 6. Your knowledge plus other people's knowledge is a massive opportunity. On my journey of slowly over time, different chairmen, different board members, different CFOs, you build connection with people. And it's funny because even though you think you don't add value to them, you'd be surprised. They enjoy working through problems. They enjoy reflecting on their journey. You'll give them ideas. So the value doesn't always go one way. So, big opportunity is whose minds can you tap into and build relationships with. And you'd be surprised. Some of these people in future may invest in your idea because they're getting clarity around what problem you're solving, and they understand actually this is a real opportunity. So never discount your mentors and your mastery, the people who are the specialists who are the masters of a certain subject matter. Partners and shareholders. So this is an interesting one. Really important you set some ground rules early when you partner. You might have a good idea, someone else has the money. You might have a good idea, but you're good at this and they're good at that. So partnerships they happen all the time. I've learnt some good lessons through bad partnership, and I've learnt some good lessons through good partnership. I've got a few different businesses that I'm involved in off the back of our core business. And once again, the 1 + 1 rule applies, because if they bring certain knowledge and expertise and you bring some, you can get much more value. So there is good reason for partnering at different times. But you need to set ground rules early, and that's setting up a charter of some sort, shareholder agreement. But the charter is really around how you're going to operate together. what are the objectives of the company or the thing you're creating? How are you going to communicate? What happens when there's disagreement? What are the values? What are the meetings and communication agreements? What's your role? What's my role? You need to set that up early, otherwise you will have conflict in the future, I guarantee it, because we all have different expectations. And most conflict comes back to communication and a gap in expectations. So the earlier you set expectations for both parties, or multiple parties, the better. And obviously, the opportunity early is to do due diligence where possible. And I talk about firing a gun before launching a cannonball. As a stakeholder, your other partners and shareholders is do some due diligence. What have they been involved in the past? If you get an opportunity to do a bit of a test run with them prior to starting the business, do that. Test and trial where possible. Do some due diligence. It's really important. And don't forget, some people are best positioned to work on their own. Simple as that. So, yeah, do your due diligence on that group as a shareholder. Suppliers. So you'll have a number of suppliers available to you, banks, accountants, people who bring expertise or money and things that you don't provide. We just changed banks. So as a supplier, my first question to them was, how do you add extra value to me? How do you expose me to your network in some way, shape or form? What events do you run for me to access, to capitalise? So they're a stakeholder. So you need to access your suppliers as stakeholders. And lastly, the board. So as a stakeholder, board members are important. Obviously, they control a lot of things that are going on. And the most important relationship in any organisation on a bigger scale is the relationship between the chairman and CEO or general manager. That's and closely followed by the CFO. So the thing to remember with board members is that a lot of decisions are made outside the board room. So understanding them as a stakeholder, if you become a board member, is to understand that how do I influence that people? It's a bit like influencing the people you work with in your team. The same applies here. As a stakeholder, you need to understand them and how do they tick, how do they think? Because getting certain results for the business to move it towards your strategic goals a lot of those discussions happen outside the boardroom and then filter into the boardroom for decision. So as a stakeholder, they're ultra important. As you move through your professional journey, you'll get exposed to different board members and different environments. I'm sure people in this room may already be part of boards. So that's the last of the stakeholders. Hopefully I've given you a bit of insight into my journey. I know I've taken a bit more time than I thought I'd take. And you might, happy to take more questions?
Absolutely.
Yep.
So an interesting story about something that looks very simple, but given the conversation that Odin had this morning with you about your team, the things you've been working on, about getting right down to what actually is the problem and discarding those other bits that look interesting but aren't the core of what you're trying to get to.
I was just asking, could you repeat your red, blue, green breakdown?
Yeah. So you got the blues are the owls. They're the accountants, the engineers. They're big on detail, but they'll take time to make decisions. They need to sleep on it. Don't rush them. The greens are the Labradors, so they're connection people. They love relationship and connection. And the reds are the tigers. They make fast decisions. They're very task driven. They crack the whip. They like to be heard. I've got a bit of red in me, just a touch.
No rabbits?
No rabbits. Yeah.
The warehousing operation you guys ended up thinking, like that was, say 3 times profit, 3 times. If you were making 3 times the amount of money off it, would you still decide to can it?
If it was more profitable, it may have been more of a decision to break it off and run it totally separate. But at that point in time, we had our back shared services was around servicing that entity and our other business. So it may have been more of an opportunity to say, look, if we're going to do this properly, we need to rebrand it and run it totally separate if the profitability was there. So that it wasn't drawing focus away from anyone in the core business, if that makes sense. Over the back there, you're first, I think.
So how do you do it in 18? So what criteria do you look at when you first put it working?
It's really around connection first and value alignment for me. Regardless of the capability or, with what you're capable of delivering, there needs to be alignment with people entering the business. So, and I think as a leader, you're constantly, succession planning, you're constantly looking to meet people and go, actually, our current HR lady, I met her 2 years before we hired her. And I knew there was alignment, but the right opportunity wasn't there. So I think it's really around constantly looking for people where there's alignment in some way, shape or form. It doesn't have to be 100% alignment because, but some alignment with people and that's the core criteria for your hiring, not the actual, what they're an expert in, if that makes sense. That comes afterwards. You can test that over time, but you can't test, the difficulty is you can't test that straight away. And we all make bad hires, right? So I think if you make a bad hire, the most important thing is that you and the individual realise pretty early and both accept that this role wasn't what they thought it was, and they weren't who you thought they were as well. So, yeah, it's really around, always fall back to values and alignment. Yep.
From a founder's perspective, how different, or if were they different at all, were the skills to start the business versus scaling the business? So how different was your role there?
Yeah, very different. Yeah. I think when you start a business, it's all effort. It's not very strategic. You haven't got unless you've got investors. We didn't have investors, so it depends what the size of the opportunity looks like and whether you're prepared to chop off some of the business to investors and bring them aboard to finance it. Because early on in a real, battle of a startup, it's really around your return is based on your effort. It's a direct reflection of effort, whereas now it's not just a reflection of effort, it's a reflection of strategic decisions and other people and structures and processes. All those things come together to give you the result. So it's a very different mentality. Early on, it's roll the sleeves up, in my case, with no investors, and work hard. First couple of years, I jumped in containers, did pays at night, and it's all about effort. There's no, very little strategic decision making because you're on a journey of discovery, trying to understand whether this market is definitely, I want to test that as cheap as possible, so I'm going to go on a journey of discovery on an oily rag if I can. Does that make sense? Yep. Yep.
I'd like to know, based on what did you take the decision to expand in Canada rather than any other country?
Yeah, good question. It was a people decision, first and foremost, as I spoke about earlier. We had a guy work for us in Australia. He married a Canadian girl, and he left the business and ended up back in Canada. And we stayed in touch and said, if we ever want to explore it, let's explore it. He got serious about it, so we had some conversations. We did some market research. He tested the market, worked in logistics, and had a good look at it. We did some numbers on the size of Vancouver compared to Australian markets, Toronto, and the fact that they were 10 years behind, we knew there's an opportunity. It was sort of all the numbers, it was all ticks as far as our ability to, a market that had a bigger problem than what we had in Australia. We had the right person to lead the team over there, and the size of the market, there was enough volume there to enable us to get a decent scale that required a team to support, if that makes sense. So it ticked a lot of boxes. Yeah. We're looking at New Zealand at the moment, that's on the radar, but also Seattle. So we're doing similar testing at the moment. But the key thing for those expansions is the right customer. We're very big on low risk sort of approach to it, where if we have the right customer to support our team, that's when we'll make the step. So that's the other thing we consider, who's the right customer for that startup in that new location.
Wharfs and ports have traditionally had pretty tough work cultures.
Yep.
How has that been an opportunity for you guys to influence the culture with the other players in that industry? And I just have a second question. We're looking at packaging as part of our problem here this week. How is packaging evolving, and does that mean you're constantly having to change, the logistics and the details of your role?
Yeah, good question. We've definitely challenged the work ethic and approach to manpower in the supply chain. And there's a lot of union. We've got a pretty large casual workforce, but some permanent. But so we've definitely challenged the union approach and the militant approach. They don't annoy us too much, to be honest, but they have a place. Unions have a place, definitely. But yeah, we've definitely challenged the approach and the work ethic of a traditionally unproductive environment. So we definitely challenged that. The packaging thing is an ongoing challenge for us because it can impact us negatively or positively. It's quite an interesting one. Like Kmart are looking at cardboard boxes, confidentially, of course, Chatham House rules. Square cardboard boxes, one like the size of a pallet, 1.2 by 1.2 high, and so that can go straight to store versus having to be handled multiple times. So they can't do that for all products, but you know, a lot of our customers since the GFC, the change in approach to supply chain has been enormous, where they've all realised that we can't afford to have that amount of fat. You know, they've been much leaner in their approach. So we're constantly trying to keep ahead of the wave. Even we're doing some stuff with QUT at the moment around robotics. So, you know, we may not be in business in 10 years, or we may not be doing what we're doing now. So our do labour differently is around how do we apply our business model to other areas within the supply chain as well. So,
just final question because we need to keep moving on with the program.
Yeah. So you mentioned that some of your clients pay after 30 days or 60 days. So in your first operations, first month, how did you finance yourself without investors?
We were quite fortunate because when we started off small, we had small customers and they'd write a cheque for you on the spot. So the time lapse was how long did it take me to go and put the cheque in the bank and the cheque clear. So early on, we were quite fortunate based on the lack of technology 15 years ago, and people, it's funny, in Canada they still pay with cheque a fair bit, so it doesn't make any sense to me now, but yeah, it was the cost of time was short because people were paying in cheques, so that made it a little bit easier in the startup phase, definitely.
All right, well, I think you've heard here quite an interesting story about an opportunity that arose that then Trent and his brother were able to turn into quite a solid business and apply many of the principles that you're learning about at the moment here. You know, narrow it down, get rid of the anti-personas, you know, how do you move into the next market? But a key thing that he's talked about, I think, is that value of culture. You know, the strength of the people who work for you, and that's not just happenstance. It just doesn't happen. You've got to work at it, you've got to have the systems and processes underneath, and then that also helps you to grow by having those things in place.
So I did have a question about working with your brother, which wasn't really touched upon. Working with family can also often be a challenge, and I'm not trying to introduce, but that's just one perspective that you have.
Yeah, I think each situation has context. It can be a challenge, mixing family and business, definitely. I think we're pretty fortunate. We're pretty open and transparent, so we will challenge each other. We'll go head to head sometimes on a subject, but I think it's just being prepared to embrace that as we call winning experiences. It's putting the right frame around it. There've been quite fiery discussions occasionally, but understanding that the intent is for success. You know, the intent is the same. So if you fail to understand the intent, then you'll see it through your own perception. So it's a key thing I have to reinforce with my team sometimes, that we're having this really fiery, robust discussion, winning discussion, because we all care about the result. It's not, you know, this is professional conflict enables good results. So embrace professional conflict. But yeah, it can be a risk, and you need to set the boundaries early, like I spoke about earlier.
All right. Well, can you all join me in thanking Trent very much? We have a small gift.
Yeah, I didn't need to do that.
No, but so the gift that we have is an investment that Trent can make in another business.
Awesome.
And then that can be repaid further on. So it's this keeping on giving and giving forward. So thank you very much.
Perfect. That's a good gift. Thank you. Thank you.